Welcome to the new episode of All That Jazz. I'm your host, Matyash, and I have with me Julia Wagner. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you.
Hello.
Nice to be here.
Hello from Europe. You're all the way in the United States, I think. I don't know where exactly, actually.
Oh, I'm in Kansas, so right in the middle.
When they say you're not in Kansas anymore, you actually are still in Kansas.
I am in Kansas. I can click my heels 3 times. And... oh, wait, I'm already here. So.
Right. Talking about glitter, in the pre-interview, we talked about the background, the pillows.
Oh, yeah, my shiny pillows.
Right.
That's strange addiction.
Right. They glitter as well in a way.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So explain the backstory of those.
Well, before he had asked me if my pillows had anything to do with my past life, and I had to admit, yes, they do have something kind of peripherally to do with what I do in extra dimensions or in another place, where I'm basically, I want to say, expanding what you might call the fabric of space-time with different colored of paneled lights. And so I'm positioning these square panels of light in space in order to sort of, what I'd say, expand space-time in that region of space. So it's a little bit of a deep concept to get into right off the bat.
I mean, keep in mind that, there's one reality on Earth, but there might be, if you accept the reality that there might be other civilizations and life on other planets, then for sure there's other life forms that have different responsibilities, shall we say, in the universe. So I don't know, it's entirely possible that something like that exists.
Yeah, it seems to me that all of time is happening simultaneously. So we might say that is sort of what we might call a future life or a different dimension, but ultimately it's happening right now. So the pillows are a representation of what I might be doing somewhere else, quote unquote, at this time in a different form.
Right. By the way, I'm drinking this. This is the first time. I'm not sponsored at all.
We'll give you that extra punch you need for the interview.
Yeah. You know what is strange? Sometimes before I do this, I feel tired. But then when it's showtime,
yeah,
I feel energized. I feel like ready to go.
Yeah. Same with facilitating a session.
Yeah. Is it always like that before you start, just kind of like sluggish, maybe? But
sometimes
when it starts, you're ready to go.
Yeah, sometimes I'm, sluggish before, or I'll start getting the impressions of what the client's feeling, kind of connecting with their energy. And sometimes they'll tell me right before we start, oh, well, I had a really bad morning or something happened. And I can sometimes pick up on some of those senses. But then as soon as we're face to face, it's almost like those problems kind of disappear. And then we start what might be considered a healing process by talking about things.
Right. Then you start digging in.
Yeah.
So is your healing process kind of mostly based on hypnosis? Since the way I understand Dolores Cannon is a lot of it seemed to me to be a kind of hypnosis, right?
Yes, I practice different modalities. There's quantum healing hypnosis technique. So hypnosis is right there in the title of what we're doing.
Right.
QHHT involves a specific induction. And so the induction itself is what somebody might categorize as hypnosis. Ultimately, what I consider hypnosis is basically, it's just working in the theta state. It's working in a different brain state. How we get there, some people would call an induction. If you have the specific script, that would be hypnosis. Right. Whereas if I'm just asking you, can you follow this feeling and take me where that feeling is taking you, what's happening, that might or might not be considered hypnosis because it's not using an induction. Right. Both of those things are likely going to be done in either the alpha state or the theta state. So it doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter all that much how we get there. The goal is to get to one of those states, to compare what that state is like to waking life and to see what perspectives those offer. And oftentimes in that experience, you'll go to what would seem to be a past life or a different perspective that's not quite the same as right here, right now in this body, this time.
I mentioned before to you that I once read a book by Michael Newton, I think something like Life Between Lives. And he mentioned that a client had recounted a lifetime on a different planet where there was no sense of humor at all.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine that?
No.
You
That
tell
would be
a joke
difficult to
there and
imagine.
you tell a joke there and nobody gets it. And if you're in tyranny, maybe you go to jail.
Yeah, I probably got kicked off that planet. Get out of here.
You know, maybe the serious people on this earth come from that planet. You know, it was such a tough life and they never
Yeah,
learned sense of humor.
that's an interesting perspective.
Or maybe they become a stand-up comic, but in Germany, which is tough, you know.
Yeah. Well, and then you start to wonder, well, what are the lessons that that person is learning in this life to where that would become important that they see? And I'm
Yeah.
guessing that they're probably learning how to take things less seriously or learning how to use humor effectively in their life from an
Yeah.
experience like that.
I think people that have a sense of easygoingness are closer to the reality of heaven than those that take themselves too seriously, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least they're happier.
Yeah. But you're halfway there already.
Yeah.
You know, you're like on the plane and you're between heaven and earth. You're in the
Well,
way.
that's kind of bad. That's where I feel like Earth really, Earth is sort of the middle dimension. We think of hell and then we think of heaven. And then I really do tend to think of this plane, this dimension as that perfect in between spot where we're given like 50% influence from this side and 50% influence from this side. And then we have
Ooh.
free will to make those choices, whatever we want to do.
Yeah, talking about choices, wow, the world is going through a really interesting place where the choice between vaccine or not. I was gonna talk about it later, but let's dig in right into it right now, actually. Wow, this is such a like I'm seeing more and more like I think I just saw a story that where in New York is becoming increasingly clear that to do anything you'll have to be vaccinated, otherwise they might fine you or even throw you in jail.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know
Yeah.
if that's real. Maybe it's fake news, but it feels like it's getting there in some very liberal states, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the medical mandates are concerning to me.
Yeah.
I feel like one of my missions here is bodily autonomy, freedom of choice, expression, those types of things. And so that comes right up against a lot of these issues that are so in ever present and so, I want to say, like, pushed. The narrative is being pushed so
Yeah. We
hard.
need like a modern day like William Wallace freedom, you know. Lineos with not with pitchforks, but with, with cell phones and a hard baguette or so. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hoping that it comes down to us all learning compromise, on both sides of these issues to where we need the freedom in order to do that. I don't think that we can learn that under forced authoritarian rule.
Yeah, I mean, if everything is forced upon us, and the thing about vaccines is that some people have. I just had I talked with like a healer the other day, and she told me that she told some of her clients that I recommend not to get the vaccine and all that, and then the lady still got the vaccine, and then her arm started hurting so much, the arm that she got the vaccine on, it hurt so much that she went to the doctor to see if it was broken, but there was nothing there. It was just that the arm was hurting from the vaccine.
Yeah, I had my partner started his job on Monday, and he came home and he said that in his training class that there was a medical professional that had been let go of her job. Like, she'd been working at the hospital, and she'd seen so many reactions that she had brought it up to her superiors, and so their response was to switch her departments. Instead of
Oh wow,
so
it's like
well
the
instead
Catholic
of
Church.
yeah, it's
Like
like instead
there's
of being
abuse
in.
and just switch him to another. This person was actually telling the truth. She was doing a good thing, and then they switched her.
And so they switched her to another department, and it was in a different parking lot, and they didn't give her the correct parking permit. She got a ticket in the parking lot, and they fired her for the ticket.
Yeah, right. They fired her because they had an agenda, and this is what they found. So they fired her.
It would appear that way. It wouldn't make sense to let go of a good employee. based off a parking ticket unless there's something else that's going on.
That's like you have you're a good player on a basketball team and the NBA team lets him go because he's late for practice. No, they have an agenda against him. It's
You would
clear
think
as
so.
day.
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, I tend to not want to attach too firmly to any one particular truth or any other particular truth. There's this parable that I love. It talks about, a deity that's coming down from heaven to show these humans a spectacle, and so this deity, he is dressed up in his finery, and he dresses all in red on one side and all in blue on the other side. And so as he's walking down the street, he comes down and all the humans are just amazed, but as he's walking down the street, half of the people see him dressed in blue and the other half of the people see him dressed in red. And he leaves, the deity goes back up, puts the sins to heaven, and leaves the humans to celebrate this miraculous appearance of God right in front of them, until they start comparing their notes. And, well, I know he was wearing red. I know it. He was definitely wearing red. And then these people over here, no, but I swear he was wearing blue. How could you have not seen it? And so, and it's not about one, the reality of the situation isn't about one trying to convince the other what they've seen. It's about accepting that everybody's truth is actually valid. So accepting that nurse's truth is valid, the person with their arms swollen up is valid, the person that decides to actually go get the vaccine for their own health and safety, that's also valid. All of these things are valid ways to create our reality. I just don't want somebody telling me how I need to create mine. That's a limitation that I feel like we're here to challenge on the earth plane. We create our own reality. We're powerful co-creators. We create our sense of hell. That's my belief system. And that's what I see when I'm conducting a session and you see a spontaneous regression of something that's been troubling somebody, and then it's gone. And so if I can do that in a session, or if that can be done, because it's not something I'm doing, it's just something that, we facilitate. If that's something that can be done through the power of whatever you want to call it, belief, alignment, using a different toolbox than just 3D tools, whatever you want to call it, if that can be done, then that's worth looking into.
Yeah, I mean, there's I like what you're saying, different truths, and there is truth to that. But I like the Eric Hoffer's definition of what's good for humanity was basically whatever is good for humanity, like it uplifts it, is good, and whatever is downgrades humanity and makes more suffering, that's evil. Like that's a simple definition. So if we bear that kind of a moralistic standard, he's not a religious, he was a philosopher, not religious at all, but if we bear that standard in mind, where do you think the vaccines lie?
I think there's different dimensions. I mean, I work with different timelines. So on one timeline, it could be the absolute savior, and another timeline it could be the absolute detriment.
Yeah,
so ultimately
we're talking
we choose.
we're talking here.
It's going to be the perfect solution. The vaccine, not itself, but the way we react to it. Whatever happens is going to happen for an ultimate reason that will challenge us to rise to our own good. That being said, I don't agree with these things. That's why I'm being challenged, and that's why I'm rising to what I consider for me, my own personal good. That's going to be different for everybody else. Somebody else is going to take that battle up for vaccination, and they're not wrong.
Yeah, I mean, think of karma. Maybe it was their karma to take it and then have health complications from it. Like I guess you could say there are no accidents. So what role does but I do believe that people have different roles. So some roles are more like active, like almost like a warrior archetype. And I think it alludes to it in the Hindu book. Oh my goodness, it escapes my mind. What's the most famous the book, the holy book of Hinduism? Wow.
Bhagavad Gita.
Bhagavad Gita, yes. Thank you.
Yes, I remembered.
Apparently in there it talks about one disciple that was asking him, what should I do? Should I go to war? And the Krishna told him to go to war. And people make different interpretations of that, but it's some people's duty to do something, and other people like Ramana Maharshi, who said like whatever is gonna happen is gonna happen, and whatever is not meant to happen is not gonna happen, no matter what you do. So the best course of action is to be silent, he said. But that's not everybody's,
Lesson.
life
Yeah.
purpose,
Right. Yeah. Not everyone's learning that. Some people are learning that they
If
need to speak up to have their
right,
needs met. And some
right.
people are learning when to shut up. Usually most of us are learning both of those things when it's appropriate, when it's best appropriate to say something, when it's more
That's
appropriate just to.
yeah, that's well said. Some people are learning how to speak up, and others are learning how to shut up. That's most of the world, I think.
Yeah, because in a lot of, like, for example, a lot of past lives, you'll deal with things that have come through
Hmm.
this programming, like things like a child should be seen and not heard.
Oh my
Such
goodness,
a
yeah.
toxic phrase that's been passed down from generation to generation. Like, I swear there's a genetic marker that
Right.
says, oh, kids need to be seen, not heard. And so when you go to the source of something like that and you go back in generations, say, well, where did that idea come from? And you see something like a father who just doesn't know how to deal with a crying child. It's not that they don't love their child. It's not that they really want them to shut up. It's that they do not know. They don't have the toolbox within themselves to know what to say to acknowledge that child's feelings in a way that isn't toxic. And so they
Yeah.
react, they judge themselves, they skip over that judgment, and then they bring it out on the child. And so once you see all of that, the child is there reacting like, I've done something wrong. I've let my parent down. Ultimately, the parent feels guilty because they don't know, they might not feel what they're doing is right. They don't know the right thing to do, but maybe they know that it's not quite right to dismiss their child. But once you see it all in the context of they're doing exactly what they know how to do with the tools that they've had at the time, and you
Right.
go back and you forgive them for that, and you say, oh, even I've been doing this, even to my children in some way. And you take responsibility, you say, okay, I can let go of those, that feels like a bondage, it feels like a tie. I can just let go of it and understand that my parents did the best that they could. And you can extend that to everybody. Their parents were doing the best that they could. This person's doing the best that they can. I haven't found anybody yet that's just willfully like, no, I'm just not going to do my best. I'm just not going to. I
Well,
mean, we all have resistance, but I'm saying
yes.
in the core level, we come here to learn.
Yeah, resistance is kind of like you could be doing better, but you're schlepping along like a 30-pound log with you, so that's why it's harder to do stuff.
Yeah, well, and
Basically.
there's things that we repeat over and over. So I feel
Yes.
like there's what you would call transformative suffering, and then what seems to be unnecessary suffering. Like, you don't need the lesson again. You've already gone through it. We don't need to learn it again, but for some reason, our body is remembering the opposite.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like a little flip that just needs to be switched. So it's like, no, 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 you don't need to remember the conditions you were reacting to 300 years ago. Through quantum healing hypnosis and beyond quantum healing, you can go to that time frame and say, wait, those conditions aren't here anymore. I'm not being, I don't have to worry about freezing to death here. So it's not important for me to, try to stock up on calories and blah, blah, blah,
Right,
and try to
right.
get warm and,
I
try to
I think
accumulate.
I did the past life regression workshop once with Georgina Cannon, a different Cannon
Oh,
in Toronto, Canada. And during the workshop, one of the lifetimes I saw was there was a soldier someplace, maybe US or maybe Britain, and I went to
mm,
war, maybe World War I, and I was kind of egoistic in a way, not
yeah,
egoistic in a sense that I had a hard time listening to the superiors, and
yeah.
because of that, I got myself lost my platoon, and it was cold, and I died.
Oh,
So
yeah. So in that lifetime, what lesson do you feel like you were learning to listen
uh,
better?
I'm still learning that lesson. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, some hard truths to that to learn from certain authority figures in my life, I think I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and certain what to reject and what to take on board, and how to know the difference, things
Yeah.
like that. But to me, always
Yeah.
like that, this is very interesting. But sometimes the philosophy is also of the past life practitioners, they say, oh, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. So I feel like, because it maybe if it was World War I, I could actually check it out and maybe go
Yeah.
back, because I'm like, I have the analytical side of me, because I'm like, I actually want to find out if this person existed. So is that possible as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of verifiable things. I mean, even a client just messaged me this morning before a
Right.
session saying, I had a flash of something, I had an experience, and I'm being told this and this and this. And when I Google it, there's my surname. I'm finding my name
Ooh.
in associated with this just flash of information that I had, that, get these breadcrumbs, and then you follow the breadcrumbs, and then you get things that resonate. And so there's some things that you can experience during a hypnosis session that are somewhat surreal, that are more like dream state. One thing's melding into another, one thing's melding into another. There are many experiences that you can go back in history and actually find things that link up. You might find 20 things that link up and one thing that doesn't necessarily mean that your experiences weren't real. It could be just an alternate reality, or they could be wrong in the facts that you're finding online, because I found that too, where it's
Right, right.
interesting, where you start to find out, I've had a lot of sessions where people that seem to be in what seems to be North America, they have horses. There were horses, and my left brain is saying, well, there weren't horses here before Europeans brought horses here.
Right.
All of my evidence would show there were horses here.
Oh,
They weren't
wow.
brought. Now, when you go to look online, there's records of horses being here. They're finding horses were in North America. So
Wow.
it's interesting how you get the flash of intuition. You're like, that can't be right. That doesn't make any sense. Well, that's okay. Just kind of put that doesn't make any sense over to the side for a minute. Just accept the experience for whatever it is, whatever it's trying to show you, whether it's quote unquote real or not, because you might find something at some point to where even that outlier makes sense.
Right. And you might find, yeah, you find facts that might be otherwise inaccessible to you, or you would think that it's actually the
Yeah.
opposite is true. Like I had this one session where I'm skeptical of actually if that was actually a past life, but there was
Yeah.
I was helping the sheriff, and what I got that I was afraid of, this was in Arizona or someplace, and I was afraid of Native Americans because we had trouble with them, but also they were stealing our horses.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, I never would have think,
Mm.
but I guess, they saw them as easy prey, and maybe they were using them, or maybe eating them. I don't know what they were doing, but it's
Yeah.
possible. But this is not something you hear commonly, that the Native Americans would steal horses. And so I thought it was a weird information that I got, you know.
Yeah. Well, you hear, there's no one that doesn't suffer from the human condition.
Right.
People steal, people lie, people cheat, there's sexual
Yes.
abuse. I've not found any society, no place is immune to all of it. There's something that we resist as humans, and something that becomes distorted, and that's I don't want to say that's always the case, but I haven't found any culture, there's nobody that's pure. We're
Right.
all dealing with this life.
Except in Russia, you don't steal. The country steals from you. Right. Let's see. I also want to mention, going back a little bit to the
Yeah,
vaccines, that you
absolutely.
worked for the CDC, Center of Disease Control, right?
Yes, I worked on
I,
behalf of the CDC
oh,
for 4 years. I was hired there to interface with the public regarding a flu vaccine back when the Sanofi Pasteur flu vaccine was contaminated, and they
hmm,
needed people to talk to the public about that incident. And so that's when I started and was hired for the CDC. And then I stayed on and answered questions about the seasonal flu. And then I became a subject matter expert on the vaccine information safety line. Was directing people to the vaccine adverse event reporting system, VAERS. And
right.
so hearing the reports as they'd come in, sending them over to that line so they could make their report.
And this was like, how many years ago was this?
This would have been up until 2009.
2009. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
there
'04
was
to '09.
every few years there's some weird flu or something that people are like, I know every few years that people there was crazy about swine flu and this flu and this flu every yeah. And
Yeah,
then
this would have been just
Ebola.
before avian influenza was really the bird flu was starting to really get popular right about when I started there, if I'm getting my timeline correct.
So you told me before that there was a guy working there and he wasn't particularly clever and that but he was one of the people
No, he
responsible for.
wasn't working with me. It's
Okay.
just it's somebody that, it's a friend of a friend, a long time friend of a friend. And so, we're told these things as as interfacing with the public. And we're told that you can't get the flu from a flu vaccine. Um, I don't know how many hundreds of times I've said that you can't get the flu from the flu vaccine. And
Right.
so then I said that to this person, casually, well, you can't get the flu from a flu vaccine. He says, but that's my job. I'm the one that inactivates the live virus flu vaccines. I'm the one that attenuates these vaccines. And you absolutely can get the flu from a flu vaccine. And that blew my mind, because either he's not telling the truth, which again, that doesn't really make me feel that safe about the quality of the product that he's putting out. And he wasn't particularly that clever. He didn't seem like, somebody that I would put in the medical professional, not that you have to be a genius or anything, but it was one of those things, like, either what he's telling me is true, that he's doing his job, he knows how to do his job, and even if he does his job 100% as good as he can, but there's no way that he can guarantee the absolute attenuation of a live virus. Either that's true, or or what the CDC was telling people, you can't get the flu from a flu vaccine, is incorrect.
So you're saying that the government apparatus is not always honest. Very interesting.
Well, I can't say that. I can just say that there's what I can see as some flaws in the system, and some what I might call just places where the information would fall through the cracks, where if somebody's calling to report an adverse event after a vaccine, and you have a list of 5 things that fall into the category that they can report on, and theirs isn't one of those 5
Oh
things,
my God.
the CDC is still going to take that information, but they're not going to release it as an adverse side effect.
Because
So
it's not
they'll,
on their list.
because
But
it's not on their list.
wow,
So
this is the typical like government behavior where it's like very rigid and it can adapt to the situation at hand.
yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, it was an interesting juxtaposition, going from starting having full faith in what I was doing, to coming full circle to where, I don't want to say I have no faith in it. There's data there that is, the CDC is one of the more reputable organizations when it comes to data. I mean, they're the ones that are interfacing with the public as opposed to interfacing with big corporations. And you start looking at the OSHA that interfaces with big corporations, and you start getting the data starts declining as far as what you would see as, the CDC is
Reliable
going to
data.
have, yeah, the CDC is going to have this type of exposure limit. NIOSH, that's kind of in the middle, the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, they're going to have this exposure limit. And then OSHA is going to have the most severe exposure limit, because they're the enforcement agency. They have to deal
Right.
with the corporations that are lobbying for maybe less safe conditions, you might say. They might be looking for to save money, or they don't care, they may or may not care that much about their employees' safety, we'll put it that way.
Right, right. And sometimes the regulations are sometimes counterproductive as well. So I think
Right. Let's
having so much faith in government is never, I don't think is never the answer, really. They're not the
look.
angels that are going to organize society for us,
Well,
really.
it's like looking at the EPA, something like that. Well, thank goodness we have some type of regulatory agency. At the same time, the EPA does very little when it comes to
What's
protecting the
EPA?
environment, the Environmental Protection
Oh, right,
Agency.
right, right.
They do very little to protect the environment. What they do, I'm not going to criticize what they do, because if we just got rid of them, then there wouldn't be any.
Right, but you know what's the first priority of any government organization? It's self-preservation.
Yeah,
So
self-preservation and then profit.
Right, but even though it's a government entity, it's still wants, it's like an organ. It kind of like, or a bacteria. It wants to grow. It wants to get bigger.
Yeah,
You know.
well, it's following the same thing that we are doing as humans. We're constantly evolving. But
Yeah.
at a certain point, we have to realize, like, at what point is evolving in this one area detrimental to a different area? And I think that that's kind of what we do with hypnosis, with quantum healing hypnosis, is you're looking for those imbalances. What's getting in the way? What's a
Mm,
pattern that we've established that used to serve us? It used to
right.
be something good. It's not good anymore because our environment's not the same. So we can hold on to the idea, the template of that reaction for when it's appropriate again, but we don't have to live or immediately react based on the circumstances that we've had to in the past.
Right. And it probably depended upon uh like with people that we incarnate, like we probably choose, we probably have a limited amount of people, but that we incarnate so many times with. And usually I've from my experience, it seems like that a lot of people incarnate with people that really they really know well, or
Yeah.
sometimes in life later on they meet people they've had like tens of lifetimes together in some capacity. So that's really interesting that you, even though you're born maybe halfway across the world, and then you go, I know you move to Scotland and then you meet people that you were connected in a previous lifetime. That's just surreal to me how synchronicity works that way, you know?
Oh, yeah. And in Buddhism, they say that we're constantly being reborn in the company of our masters, of our teachers. So it's like
Oh,
we're all of these little spiritual communities, whether we divide into family groups here or however we divide up on this plane, that we're constantly learning from each other. And so we have our favorite teachers, our favorite relationships and bonds, the people that we bounce ideas off of. And
yeah. Favorite
some of them
people
are
we love to hate.
romantic. Yeah, well, usually it's the people that we love, and there are exceptions. There are different, all kinds of different roles, but there are people that we love that come here specifically to play those roles for us. People
Mm,
will say, I do not, I say, I create my reality. And they say, well, I do not believe that a child would choose childhood sexual abuse. And I say, not everyone does. Not all children choose that. I did. That's a contract that I had with my dad.
you specifically.
Yeah,
Wow.
specifically did. And so that's a contract that I had with him. Now, I don't know what his contract was with the other kids that he abused. I can't I can't extend forgiveness. I can't extend understanding because I don't have it. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I can say is that he fulfilled the contract for me. He did a great job. I'm fine. I'm better for the experiences that I had. And I don't want to say that, there's so many people that have things so much worse than I experienced. I just got a glimpse, but it's just a glimpse that I needed in order to empathize more fully with people that it's so common. There's so many people that go through it, and I can't say that they chose it. That wouldn't be helpful. But what I can say is that there's usually some reason that it comes about, and that usually has something to do with them stopping a different cycle. So it might be something like, I step in here to choose this rather than having my child have to go through it,
Mm,
in order to change the momentum of society, in order to lessen the type of abuse that's happening in the future. Also, sometimes people undergo things that are horrible just to teach other people empathy. So there's children that are born with disabilities just to teach their parents how to unconditionally love another person.
yeah,
And
my
people that
parents
have
were
dementia.
my parents were born, well, my mother was born deaf. My dad is completely deaf now,
Wow.
but he had something happen when he was 4 years old, like a really high fever. He was sick, and then he lost most of his hearing as a child, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
I hear that's a really alienating, can be a really alienating type of condition.
Well, I think they went to a school. They were in the capital city called Ljubljana here in Slovenia. There was one school in the country because it's a really small country, size of New Jersey.
Yeah. Oh,
So
wow.
they went there, and that's where all of them were together in the school. So it's a specialized school for them, and
Yeah.
they turned out all right. You know, there was had 3 kids, had led a relatively normal life despite the handicap, you might say. So,
Yeah.
it's amazing. But they probably chose, at least my mother, when you chose it, I
Yeah.
suspect my father did as well, because it happened at 4 years old. So, it's,
Yeah. Things that
yeah,
happen that early often do. The other thing that happens when our senses shut down, sometimes they can shut down as a result of trauma. When we're born with something, then it seems usually those are things that are planned before we come in.
right.
But
Like
I've
Helen Keller,
yeah,
hearing
that's
and sight. That's,
definitely
whoa.
contract. She's like totally ambitious. That's an ambitious
Yeah, yeah.
soul
She's like,
right
what can
there.
I do in this lifetime that will be the hardest? So
The
no sight,
hardest.
no vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go with that.
I mean, bless her. How does she do it? I mean,
Oh
and
my goodness.
I have had, one of my best friends, I did their session and asked their higher self, well, why has this person had it so hard? I mean, it hasn't been 2, 3 weeks go by that there hasn't been a traumatic event. And I was like, okay, well, this would be this, and then okay, well, this, and now mental health, and okay, all of these different things, moving, military, and so you look at this timeline and it just doesn't let up, doesn't let up, doesn't let up. So I ask her higher self, well, why? Why did they choose this? And I said, well, they're very ambitious. They wanted to take all the extra classes. They wanted to squeeze it all in. They're
Oh
taking
man.
those AP classes, those higher level courses
Right. Is
back to
that what it
back.
is?
Some of them. Some people are preparing for something to come. I've had a couple of people where they say, well, they've got to be tough. Well, why do they
Oh,
need to be tough? Well, they just need to be tough. You get the sense, well, they're preparing something either for later in this life or next life, where this lesson is more about physical endurance. This lesson might be about accepting just that things are crap sometimes.
yeah.
Most of the time you don't get a whole life of that. It seems sad, it seems unfortunate to me when you do. Then again, when you look at the huge timeline of things, there's really nothing that's tragic, because everything just keeps going, it keeps flowing. And what seems like a whole lifetime to us and is so excruciating while we're in these bodies, it's just a game on the other side. People say it wasn't real. It doesn't
Right.
feel like this was real. This is the real place.
Yeah, that's the old Bill Hicks, the comedian. It's just a game. It's just a roller coaster.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't
But it
realize you
seemed,
said
but the
that.
thing is, people can say that, but the people suffering while they hear is
Right.
very, very real. I don't want to diminish that.
No,
It's,
no, and that's the other reason why we are here,
yes.
is to play that real game, to minimize that suffering,
Mm,
or to understand it if that's part of our lesson for this particular lifetime, or to go through it if that's the particular
right.
lesson in this lifetime.
So, in a sense, you're saying that a lot of the suffering that we received in life is not accidental. We actually chosen.
Most of it. There's
Mm,
definitely things that are superficial. I asked somebody. I've gotten 2 different answers to this question, and I have a feeling that it has to do with some of the subtleties.
right,
Say, is anything wasted in life? And sometimes the higher self says nothing's wasted. It all goes to something.
right.
And then other times people say, well, yeah, some of this stuff is just unnecessary. You just don't need. You just don't need to kick that puppy. You don't need to. It's not a lesson. It's not good for the puppy. It's not helping your foot. It's not creating value. That is wasted.
It's creating karma for you. You'll be kicked in the next lifetime in the head.
Well, maybe it just depends on
Maybe.
whether
Right,
you understand it or not. Why,
right, right.
if you learn that is a wasted lesson, then you probably don't need to suffer for it. It's just about understanding. And usually it's not like a punishment type of thing. It's, I want to experience all these different things. I want to experience what it's like to be on the victim side. And then after
Mm,
you've been on that side, you want to experience, oh, well, why would that person do that? I don't understand what would possibly make them do that. So then you have that experience, like, oh, that's what could drive someone to
mm.
do that.
I don't think that karma is a very higher understanding, but I don't think it's the ultimate. Maybe a bit from my Christian perspective, but I think there is something of grace to be said. Like my spiritual teacher this lifetime. David Hawkins said, you know, if karma was there, all there was, that a lot of people would be in spiritual jail for a long time, you know, to
Yeah, I just think
paraphrase.
yeah, I think of karma as cause and effect, as
Right, right,
opposed to anything that has a judgment on it. It's just, well, this
right,
happens and then this happens. This condition seems to be creating this. It's gravity.
right,
Is what I see it. It's an electromagnetic force that pulls things that desire each other together. This expression needs something to hold it. This form needs a body. This mystic thing needs a solid thing. It's just a balance of
right,
opposites
right.
coming together and interplaying.
Yeah, it's still a very hard life. I hope
Well, it's
uh
harder on this side than we ever imagined on the other. That seems to be
I,
universally true.
you know, you said before a phrase that is very common. You know, there's somebody in, you know, that's having it worse off. And imagine George, you know, having all these troubles, you know, in life, and every horrible thing happened to him, and he's like, I'm sure somebody has got it worse. And the voice of God says, no, George, you have it the worst.
You're the worst one.
It
Nope,
just
you're
something
this
about
one.
you just pissed me off, George.
I mean, I guess somebody has to.
Yeah.
If we live in a relativistic, a relative universe, then somebody's got to be this and somebody's got to be that. But
Yeah.
ultimately we don't, you know, and that's the what we step out of when we exit this 50-50 world, we exit this earth realm, is that we no longer have to play by these limitations, these rules. We're in a whole nother operating system.
By the way, I just want to credit David Hawkins. I kind of adapted a joke of his where he says in a 12-step group, you know, there's this guy called George that, you know, his wife leaves him, his house burns down, his car is stolen,
Yeah.
and George cries out to God, God, why me? And then God says to him, I don't know, George, something about you just pissed me off. It's such a great
Never
joke,
did
man.
like that one. Well, there's this Buddhist parable too, or saying about feeling like we're the worst horse. You know, it's like you
Yeah.
praise yourself, you got to run this race, you're the best horse, you're the best horse, you're the best horse. And then all of us, well, we all just feel like the worst horse. We're never going to win this race.
Let's see. Let us go into the short demonstration about
Yeah.
hypnosis, right? A group.
Yeah.
I know you don't often do a group hypnosis thing, but this will maybe it'll
Yeah.
help somebody. And I'm always happy to be the guinea pig on the show.
Yeah. Well, for this, what I'll do is go through Dolores Cannon's group past life regression
Cool,
formula.
cool.
And so I'll do it as if we're in a group. So there'll be a lot of silence. That's okay.
That's yeah,
Just allow whatever comes to your mind to come to your mind, and then just make a mental note of it.
right.
If somebody's listening, go ahead.
Does this mean that I might go in a past life?
You might go into a past life.
Ooh,
That's the intent. Although,
nice.
since this is such a light session, if somebody out there is listening and they don't go immediately to a past life, then don't think that you can't be hypnotized or something like that. This is just a demonstration. One-on-one sessions are always more embodied and almost always just very easy to get
Yes.
somebody to go into a past life. I've only had a couple people that really just didn't want to, you know, they
Yeah,
stopped me and said, I don't
that's
want
it. But people need to understand all hypnosis is self-hypnosis. It's not, we're
Yes.
not mind controlling it, just you're
No.
allowing it. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we'll
Right.
be doing is tapping into that right side of the brain. It's the same part that has our memories, our regular everyday memories. So if we're
Yes.
remembering, what did we eat yesterday? If we're remembering something from childhood, we're using that same pathway for the brain. Keep in mind that we don't sense everything with our eyes. So if I say, what do you see? It might be the same as, what are you experiencing?
Yes.
Just keep in mind that if you close your eyes right now, you know if you're indoors, you know if you're outdoors. You can sense things other than just with that one sense. So just everyone that's listening, use all of the senses that you can, even ones that you might not necessarily know you have yet.
Right.
Just let it happen as much as it can. Not everyone's visual. Some people will just get impressions. That's how I do. Just get impressions. Seems like I'm a woman. Oh, wow. So you might not know immediately what's going on. Just let all the details fill in.
Yeah,
So
for me, sometimes I'd love to, if there was a movie, like I was just there and all that, but my experience was not that. It was like glimpses of images here and there, and then but it mostly was like, I think it's this, I think it's this. But yeah, for everybody's different, right?
Yeah, and the longer you do it, the more information will come more clearly.
Yeah.
And people can even tap into the past lives after the session is over. In fact, most people notice that they're open for 2 or 3 days, even after a session, and even after something like this. Some people do notice physical healing after things like this, just because just getting that little perspective, or emotional healing, just getting that little idea of, oh, that's why I've always been scared of the water. That's why I've never liked this. That's why I've always been drawn to this. And you might get a glimpse of that.
But because you have drowned in ancient Greece, that's why you're afraid of water.
Right. Right. And you had a glass of wine right before, so that's why you don't want to drink in this life.
That's it.
You just never know. Yeah, you really never know until you've experienced those things. And there are some things that tend to correlate. So it's interesting.
Yeah. You had too much wine and you crashed the ship that you captained.
Yeah, you might have some guilt that's lingering if you haven't processed that in that life.
Because there's 55 other crew members that died on that day.
Yeah, you might have some guilt until you resolve that for some reason, that was supposed to happen.
That's why this, if people come to I just want to say, people come to an emotional place, which might happen, because I know from personal experience that you might tap into really quickly into something emotional. So probably they need to do some other kind of work to resolve that.
Yeah, if you do have an emotional reaction, feel free to message me. I'm always glad to take it to the next level.
Yeah.
Typically, I trust the higher selves not to show us more than we're ready to see. Right. So we can set that expectation right now that you're not going to be shown more than you can handle. The higher self always has that in mind as they reveal these things. If you are having a visceral reaction, there's probably something that you need to react viscerally to, and it's just bringing it to the surface. And now you know, and you can deal with it.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. So what I like to do first is have people imagine some normal everyday scenes, things that they might be pretty familiar with, might be just a little bit out of the ordinary. So as I ask you to imagine some of these scenes and fill in the details, just let your mind go to whatever wants to come. If I mention something and it doesn't match with what you're seeing, go with what you see. You're the one that's doing it correctly, and you're in charge, and there really is no right or wrong answers. So just let it all come in. So go ahead and close your eyes, get relaxed. Sometimes I like to move my eyes around in kind of a figure 8 pattern. Let's get them going. So imagine now that you are standing on the corner of a very busy intersection of a very big city. There's a lot of traffic at this intersection, a lot of noise, a lot of things going on here. See that scene and fill it with as many details as you can. You are at the intersection at the corner of a big city. Okay, very good. So it's easy to imagine those details. So now I want you to leave that scene. And now you are standing out on a pier. And you are looking out over the water. This might be a fishing pier. There might be boats out on the water. There might even be some people fishing. Take notice. Okay, wonderful. Now leave that scene, and you are standing in a train station. You're on the platform of a train station. There's a train that's coming down the tracks. You can see it, you can hear it. See if you can feel the vibration as that train comes closer and closer into the station. You're standing on that platform, watching that train come in. Okay, now leave that scene, and you are riding a carousel, a merry-go-round, just like you might have done when you were a child. You can see the horses, you can see them as they go around and around. You hear the music as it's playing, feel the horses moving up and down, around and around on that merry-go-round. You're reliving being on a carousel. Okay, now go ahead and come back to regular reality. Take your time and open your eyes. And so that's just the start to get people's minds ready. We haven't done the past life portion yet. This is just the imagination exercise portion, but people often do go into a past life just during these imagination exercises.
Wow.
So sometimes people might notice things that are just a little bit off on these scenes that they're creating.
Well, my scene at the end, it was kind of like carousel, and then I imagined there's a movie I really loved as a kid, so part of the scene incorporated that movie, and the actors going about doing, because I've seen that movie so many times, like Bud Spencer and Terrence Hill movie. Anyway, it was so
good job. Yeah, so that's getting that part of the imagination / memory / intuition. It's all getting activated. Like I say, sometimes somebody, especially with the train station, since that's such a common place to have an important meeting, a lot of times people will see an old train, or all of a sudden they'll notice that they're in different clothing or something else is going on. Now, if we were having a one-on-one session, we would talk more about those questions. I could ask about the details. Does it feel like you're going somewhere on this train, or are you waiting for someone to show up? Or when you're in the city, do you want to go somewhere in that city? Where do you want to go? Things like that. Who's with you? What's the occasion? And so you can really create a whole narrative. And sometimes that narrative is from a past life. It's just coming into this present, because we're giving it the opportunity.
Just with the imagination. Wow, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and a lot of times when I'm starting a session, what I'll have somebody do is imagine that they're going to find something that's unusual for them in a place in their house. And so oftentimes that thing that they find that's unusual, it almost always relates directly to where they're going to go in the past life experience.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah, or it'll be an animal that's a spirit guide. Those are the two things that usually happen. There's other outliers. I mean, every session is completely different, but a lot of times people will find an object that is from another lifetime, or they'll find an animal that's been with them for many, many, many. We have our, like you say, we reincarnate with people. We reincarnate with animals as well. They're with us.
Wow.
Always.
So the animals are part of the, like, on the spirit, but there might be actual animals that are with us that are part of our family, in a way, spirit family.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. One person, they had to, their family was starving, and they had to kill the horse.
Oof.
And it's his best friend, and so close to, I can't even imagine my own animals, having to make that kind of decision, my child or my animal or my wife and my animal. And they made this decision. And then I said, well, do you know what happened to them? What happened to that animal soul? And like this spark of realization, oh, they're my dog.
Oh,
They're,
wow.
So obviously there was forgiveness. Obviously this animal wants to be a part of there were no hard feelings. That animal was there to sacrifice itself. And it's tragic that has to happen. At the same time, the animal's that particular situation, that animal was more than willing to do that. Because we understand the continuum. We understand that we'll see each other again. There's goodbye in this life, in this form. And it's so precious when we do meet. It's precious that we're together in these fleeting moments, because they'll never be reproduced. These are the templates that we're making for future generations. At the same time, we can always see each other again. So there's no reason to cling to these moments like they're, like that's somehow going to make them better. They're perfect the way they are.
Right.
And we're going to have more. And so it makes it easier, I think, for people to face death, to face loss, to face suffering, to face illness, knowing that these things, even as they feel excruciating, as they feel like they're going to be forever, they are temporary. And once you get to the other side, even at a certain point, even while you are suffering, you can see the other side. And so I think that as we get closer and closer to that, that's where our happiness lies, is being able to suffer and celebrate simultaneously.
Yeah, I remember once I was leaving a hostel. I lived in France in this hostel for 8 months, and I was really sad to leave because I made such good friends there. And this is my best friends there. My best friend, one of my best friend, Joseph, when I was saying bye to him, he said something like, it's not a goodbye, it's a see you later,
Yeah.
Yeah.
My mentor, and I don't know if he meant this quite the same way, but he would always say, he said, I'm not ignoring you, I'm waiting for you. So, like this one step ahead, I'll get there someday.
What is that, a game? Like, what is he waiting for you to make the first move or contact him again? I don't know.
I think it depends on the context in which he's using it. But yeah, he passed over in March. And so it's interesting learning to speak with him on a whole nother frequency.
Oh, see, he's able to communicate. I told one of my friends, I told him when he passed away, can you try to call me on the phone? Like, can you do that?
My dad did that.
He called you on the phone?
Well, not on the literal phone,
Oh.
but he told me before he died, Julia, if I can come back, I want to make this clock ring. And then I didn't have access to that clock. Like my sister got it or something happened to it. I'm not sure whatever happened to that clock. And so instead he came to me in a dream, and it wasn't that long after he passed, maybe within a week, somewhere around there, that he called me in a dream, and he was frantic. He says, Julia, I have to tell you something. I'm not dead.
Wow. And then you woke up and it's like, where's Dad?
Well, I just have this understanding. Like, I know what you're saying. I know what you mean. You're not dead.
Oh.
And he was a devout atheist almost, like it's not like he didn't believe in the afterlife. He just didn't believe in a God, I guess. And so he didn't necessarily have any specific thoughts of what was going to happen afterward.
But then on the other side, he was like, oh shit, I was wrong. So I better call her.
Hey, yeah, hey. Well, and he was like, it's almost like they're lying to you, Julia. There is no death.
It's a conspiracy. I was wrong all my life.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy. They're all wrong. There is more to this than just, solid matter.
Yeah, I think there is truth a lot to the a deathbed conversion. When a staunch atheist before death, when the thought flashes in his mind, what if I was wrong?
Yeah, at the same time, like I don't believe that my like I can still represent myself as an atheist because I don't believe that necessarily. I believe that there is consciousness, but I don't necessarily think it's separate from our own consciousness that's in
Yes,
charge of
yeah.
things. And so I would tend to say the universe might be God. Everything collectively, all that is God. But it's funny you should say that about my dad because he did not convert ever. He was on his deathbed. He'd been in the hospital for over 3 months. He'd had his foot amputated. He'd had a stroke.
Ooh.
He knew he was on the way out. He'd been comatose for solid 4 or 5 days. He had not responded to anything, maybe even a little bit longer than that, probably more like a week. And they brought the minister in to administer him last rites. He
Woke up
sat up
and said no.
pissed.
Of course.
He couldn't vocalize. I mean, he couldn't speak words, but he was like, that's my dad. That is definitely
Did he
that's
try to throw
stubborn.
the knife?
He did. No, he wasn't violent, but just, just no.
Yeah,
It was
yeah.
like a snicker, I thought it was kind of funny.
Right. Did you say there was more to the
Yes.
yes, okay.
Yes, I was going to say, let's do the other half of this.
Yes.
This should be the more, let's say, concrete experience, or to have a chance to go a little bit deeper into an actual embodied life. So if you can, try to feel your body, feel what's happening in this scene just as much as you possibly can. Okay, so to start out with, again, we'll have you visualize something that's very familiar to you.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to imagine that you're outside of your home. You're looking at your home. So imagine your home from the outside. Imagine that you're going into your home. Imagine the room that you walk into and see all the details in that room. Notice all of the furniture. Now from there, walk into your kitchen and take note of everything in your kitchen. Where's your stove? Look at your stove. Notice the refrigerator. There's a place that you eat meals. Take note of that. Now I'd like for you to go into the bedroom where you would normally sleep, or wherever you would normally sleep to get some good rest at night. Go into that room. Now look at the walls in that room. I want you to find a wall that does not have a door in it. So look at that room and find a wall that does not have a door in it already. So to look at that wall, and I would like for you to put a door in that wall. Imagine that there's a door in that wall. And now open that door. Put your hand on the doorknob or handle, open that door. And when you open that door, you'll see steps going down. You see stairs that are going down in front of you. I want you to walk down those stairs. The bottom of those stairs, you see a long hallway that's going away from you. Notice that long hallway. Walk down that hallway. There's plenty of light that you can see where you're going. So walk down that hallway. And in the distance, you notice a light at the end of the hallway. In that light, there's an opening. You can see the light down there at the end of the hallway. And you notice that there is an opening at the end. Now you've walked down that hallway and you have reached the opening at the end of the hallway, and you are standing in front of that opening. This is the doorway, the opening to the past. You know that when you step through that opening, you will be in another time, another place where there is information waiting for you. When you're ready, step through that opening. And now you have stepped through that opening. Take notice. Does it feel like you are inside, or are you outside? Become aware of all of your surroundings. Take notice, look around you. What do you see? And if you don't see anything yet, it might be like a mist that gently lifts off of your vision as you take notice of your surroundings. See what impressions you have. Now become aware of your body. Are you standing or sitting? What kind of clothes are you wearing? Look at your feet. What are you wearing on your feet? Are you male or female? Are you young or old? Feel your body becoming familiar with what it feels like. Are you holding anything or carrying anything or wearing anything on your head? Do you feel healthy? Now that we've seen your body, I want you to go to the place where you live in that body, the place where you eat or sleep or rest. Stand in front of that place. What does it look like from the outside? Does it seem simple or fancy? Now go inside the place where you live. See what rooms are there. And now see, where do you cook your food? I would like for you to show me a meal that you would eat. Where do you eat this meal? What kind of food are you eating? Is there anyone eating with you? Who prepared this food? Did you make it yourself or did somebody else prepare it? Notice if there's anyone else living in this home with you. You'll see them with you now. Is there anyone with you? Okay, now that we have an idea of your body and your home, I'd like for you to leave that scene, and I'd like to see what it is that you do. How do you spend your time? Do you have a job or an occupation or a role that you play? What takes up the majority of your time? See yourself doing this. Do you use any special tools to do this job? Do you have any special knowledge that it takes to do this job? Okay. Now that we have an idea of how you spend your time, I would like for you to take me to a time or day, some time or place that has meaning for you in that lifetime. So now leave that scene and move forward to an important or meaningful day, a day that you consider to be important, and something is changing or happening. You're moving to that day. You find yourself there now. What's happening?
Are you asking?
I'm just giving you time to explore. Very good. Okay. Now that you've seen that day, I'd like for you to leave that scene and now move forward to another important day. Another day when something else is happening that's meaningful to you, something that you consider to be important. You've gone forward to that day and you're there now. Take a few moments to notice what's happening. Wonderful. And now I'd like for you to drift and float away from that time. Leave that scene and go forward to another time and place that's meaningful for you in that lifetime. Another time where something is happening, something important is going on, or there's meaning for you. Notice what is happening around you. Okay. And now that we have taken a look at your life, I would like for you to leave that scene and I want you to move forward to the last day of your life in this lifetime that we are looking at. The last day of your life in the lifetime you're looking at. I want to see what happens to you on that day. Now, as you see this, it won't bother you at all. And you can watch that as an observer if you'd like to. You've gone forward to the last day. You can see what's happening on that day and the last day of your life in that lifetime. Are there people with you or are you alone? What's the last thought you're able to think? And now, whatever has already happened, and you are on the other side of it. You're out of the body, and you are on the other side of it. It's already happened. From that position, you can look back over the entire lifetime and see it all from a different perspective. Was there anyone in that lifetime that you know in the present lifetime? If there is, you'll make that connection now. Now, every lifetime has a lesson, and I've heard that every lifetime has a purpose. As you look back over that lifetime, what was the lesson you learned from that experience? And trust anything that comes to your mind. What other lessons did you learn in that lifetime? See, what was your purpose in that lifetime? You're able to tell, how did you help others? What was your role? Hey, good job. All right, we're going to come back into this room, into this consciousness. And to help you do that, I'll count to 10. You'll be wide awake and feel wonderful all over. And you will remember everything that you have seen so you can write it down. It will be in your memory so you can record it after the session. You're starting to become conscious of this room, this place. And as I count to 10, you'll be back in your body and feel wonderful all over, remembering everything that you've experienced. 1, 2, you're starting to breathe faster, the blood circulating a little bit faster as you're beginning to wake up now. 3, 4, you're becoming aware of the physical body. You're very much aware of the physical body, and you can move your arms and legs around, get everything waking up. 5, 6, you're becoming aware of the sounds in the room, and you might even start to hear the sounds outside of the room. You're very aware of your physical surroundings because you're oriented back here in this time, in this place. 7, 8, you're coming up very nicely. And 9, 10, you are wide awake and feeling wonderful all over, like you've had a nice nap or a nice rest, truly rested and refreshed.
Yeah.
Yay!
There we go.
Wonderful.
Wow. That was
Now,
a tough life. I was spilling in blood at the end.
oh no.
The guy was working in the mine.
Oh wow. So one of the rough lives, huh?
I mean, he liked his wife a lot, but yeah, it was a tough, he was working a lot. Yeah.
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 Yeah. Do you notice anybody from that life that you know in this life?
I thought maybe a mother, but I didn't get a clear picture of other people.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was very, at first I thought he was, because I got like a impression of small spaces. I thought maybe like San Francisco shafts, like underneath, when they have the drainage whatnot for sewer. But
Okay.
then when you said work, I got the guy went into a mine, so I was like, oh yeah, this is different.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense, huh?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Did you
yeah.
die when you were older or younger?
He must have been not older than 45. I
Yeah.
guess that was normal back then, especially if you're working in a mine.
In the mine. Yeah, I was going to say it might depend on the occupation. There's a lot of
Right.
sessions I do. People seem to live pretty old. You know, if there's not something actively coming after their health, I think they live. Their average lifespan seems pretty comparable to today, except that all the circumstances there are hard.
Right. Yeah. It seemed like he wasn't. I mean, he looked probably a lot older than he was because of all
Yeah.
the hard work, the hard labor he put in.
Yeah.
So
What was your death like? How did you pass? Do you
yeah,
know?
just I think it had something with the lungs, and he was coughing blood. So
Yeah.
maybe it was cancer as well. Some I don't know. It
Yeah,
was just
something to do with
something,
the lungs.
yeah, something bad with the lungs, and he was just, yeah, was not a good way to go.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Were you able to
Wow.
feel like what it was like on the other side? Did you get any sensations about not having a body?
Yeah, it was preferable. It was like a
Yeah.
lot less intense and
Right.
just and painful. Seemed like there was
Yeah.
some suffering there, yeah, in the physical body.
Yeah. Some people say it's like taking off a tight shoe or
Yeah.
something like that. It's like just
Yeah.
loosening the ties.
Wow, this is it's quite fascinating. In a short amount of time, you're able to go in a lifetime
Yeah.
and kind of obviously if this was a session, then you go, how long are your sessions when you do them with people?
That normally they're broken into two parts: an interview section and then the hypnosis or the past life kind of section. And so the beginning, I mean, the whole thing's usually about 3 to 5 hours, sometimes a little bit longer.
Oof.
So for the first, it flies. I mean, you would be surprised. It's just like, just when you're chatting with
Wow. Yeah,
somebody and
yeah,
the
yeah.
time just goes. And so
What
for
if they
the
have to go
interview,
to the toilet? I always wondered
we
about
just
that.
go. Yeah, you just
Is
go. In fact,
okay.
sometimes it helps people actually go deeper into trance to
Hmm.
have a break like that. For some reason, they go and then they come back and right
And
back or
and
deeper.
and then you put it as a part of your induction, like when you come back and you go back,
Yeah, you'll get
just
even
close your
more
eyes so you get deeper.
relaxed.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
So 3 to 5 hours, just depending. Usually the interview is an hour or two, sometimes three, depending on how much stuff we want to talk about, how many questions that the person has brought into the session for their higher self or their subconscious mind. Because the past life part's just part of it. That's just the beginning part of the hypnosis or trance part of the session. What we do after we explore that for at least 30 minutes, usually 30 to 45 minutes, just in that one life, then I'll ask, can I speak to your higher self or your subconscious mind, the part that
Hmm.
has the information that exists between the lifetimes? And so that's what goes above and beyond what you'd think of as traditional past life,
Right.
because we'll also see the higher self or the subconscious mind's take on all of it. Why did they show you that life of that minor? How does that relate to your life now? What are the lessons that you learned in that life that you're applying, that you've already learned and you're applying? Or what are the learns that did you come back to learn? I like to ask in a session too, I'll have that person, your past life, that minor, what advice does he have for you? And then
Yeah, I get the sense that have more joy and don't work yourself to death, kind of thing.
yeah.
That was my sense of it, because the way his life went. I mean, he had a son. I think he had one child, a son. He
Yeah.
got married. That was the happy moment. But there was
Yeah.
still a sense of like the guy was just working hard.
It's
Was
not getting ahead.
No, yeah, well, it was tough. I think this was more than 100 years ago, so people had to,
Yeah.
just working, working, working a lot,
Yeah.
and that's just how it was
If you could give advice to him, would you have any?
to him.
Yeah.
Um, like kind of similar what he gave me, like just enjoy life more, take joy in the small things in life,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah. And tell him it's not always that hard.
yeah. Yeah, it's tough, man. People back more than 100 years ago, we can't imagine how tough their lives were compared to today. It's just like on another level as far as physical.
It
It was
depends on
more
some
physical,
people though.
right?
There's people
Okay,
that work today that are just as bad off as that minor in a
right. Okay,
contextual way, that have gone through just as much physical pain. So I don't necessarily think, I do think that we're evolving, and I do think it's always getting better. So if you look at right now, we're going to have a snapshot of the best moment ever because of the way that evolution works. At
right.
the
Compared
same
to what?
time,
Right, right.
yeah, exactly. Because we're always getting quote unquote better and better. And that's one way that we kind of categorize things. So if you look at it in that way, I see it as relatively, it's not necessarily that life was so much harder then, or that life is so much easier now. It's more just like, how do we appreciate what it is when it is? How do we
Hmm.
appreciate it for what it is when it is? And like I said, I don't see that it was necessarily, we're having the same struggles now, but in different contexts. So now we're not necessarily, most people, there's people that might still have to survive against the physical elements.
Yes.
Most people don't in this day and age. We're not seeing as many death by exposure, although when we do, it's maybe even more tragic. But we're not seeing those types of things like we would see back in what you might call caveman days, where we were just searching for shelter.
Right. Even in Africa, like things are, especially in the past 30 years, things have exponentially gotten better as far as physical survival, medicine, food quality, things like that, just all gone up.
Well, not food quality.
Okay, maybe food quality.
Yeah. And
okay.
Those are the things where it's just like, nah, I mean, yeah, there's things that have gotten better, but there's things that we've become so removed from that. We've become so removed from the patterns that have created our very nature that now it's almost like a catch-up game trying to figure out how to survive in the modern world using outdated programming. So we either need to go back the way things were, or we need to update our programming, and really the answer is somewhere in between. We can keep moving forward. We don't have to throw away our modern amenities, but we can understand the cycles on which they're based, that there's a balance, that if we take from here, that it's going to show up from here.
So, okay, I have one big final question to ask, and this is very important because I know there's some sense that you could like do a future regression as well. And I'm kind of like you talked about before about things getting better, and that's always true, except when it's not, just before the fall of Rome, and then the Rome falls and falls of Roman Empire, and then things get worse. So I think in this day and age, because US is such a big influence on the whole West, if that falls, I don't know. Hopefully we're not at the point of no return. That's Western society doesn't destroy itself. So that's the long way of me asking you, what do you think? Do you think humanity is evolving, or do you think we're close to a collapse of some sort?
I think we're closer to, you might say that there's this level where you kind of make it over the hump. We are closer than we have ever been as a collective to making it out over that hump. And I might even dare say we've already made it over the hump with the momentum that we have. It's our duty to continue. We can screw things up always, but it doesn't look like we are on that path. It looks like we are on the path towards whatever that means. There's nothing set in stone as to what this over the hump means, but you might look at it into going into 5D. You might look at it as expanding that 4D. Raising consciousness, having more options, having the options to exist simultaneously in different dimensions, having the options to remember our different incarnations, as opposed to just being stuck, feeling like we're stuck and alone in this place. We're integrating the mystic, the surreal with reality.
Yeah, it does seem like because I see a lot of some videos, even White House has a YouTube channel, and a lot of it, even trivial videos, get 80% or 90% dislike ratio. And I find it hilarious because people are, I recently commented on Biden that he has a foreign policy awareness of a California Valley girl, like
she's probably more educated.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did plagiarize a lot of his law degree, and even some speeches later on. So he's not sharpest tool in the shed, to say the least. And now he's old, even. So
it would just be nice to have any politician that represents anybody's, any what you might call a liberal need or leftist need, or something that's a little bit more what I would consider progressive, as far as actual environmental protections, actual restructuring, more equity when it comes to the way finances are distributed, and just having some kind of, basically the option to vote for anybody who isn't, established politician that has billions and billions of dollars.
Okay, I get the sense you're not a fan of Trump, but I really loved him. He at least destroyed ISIS, and now the Taliban, which is not even ISIS, not that sophisticated. They managed to, oh my, yeah, I just don't want to think about that, what they've done in Afghanistan.
Well, it's interesting to switch out players, it's just like
Yeah,
we've been playing this game for so long, and then there's a big switch and it needed to happen, and now it's different. And it's interesting because I don't have an affiliation, a political affiliation. I'm not pro-Trump, I'm not pro-Biden. I was pro-Bernie. Like I like Bernie Sanders, and even he's not as progressive as I am. I mean,
right,
who represents people that say I create my own reality? I mean, ultimately we do. So I mean,
right.
that's the power of balance, is that ultimately once you recognize that we're creating all this, you have more agency to do it. We're creating all this whether we do it mindfully or not. So
Yeah,
we
maybe,
might as
yeah, maybe the answer is that the society progresses in spite of politics, not because of it. It's just that sometimes politics restricts it. That's the only thing that, yeah, can be
yeah.
bad in a
Well,
way.
in Buddhism, they talk about, I think they call him the devil king of the sixth dimension. And that represents all the authoritarian rule that comes down on us and keeps us feeling like we're less than. But
Mm,
ultimately, we're not. It's false. It's a false authority. And so as we recognize that all of these are false authorities, that we really are doing it. And as you start doing it, then you know you're doing it. And as you know you're doing it, then you just don't have the wherewithal to pretend like you're not doing it. It doesn't make sense to spend your energy pretending like I'm not healthy.
right. I mean, spiritual progress does more for the world than anything you can ever do, like as far as monetary, I think, because
I think,
yeah.
yeah, money might represent certain things to certain people, but
Yes. So if people want to have a session with you, where can they find you?
my name is Julia Wagner, so you can find me on Facebook. That's the best way to message me. My page is QHHT, Quantum Healing with Julia. I have a website, which is 5D Expansion with Julia. So if you type in any of those things, you should be able to find me.
I'll put those links in the description as well, so people can find you there easily.
Thank you so much.
And do you have any last words before you part this time?
And just as far as sessions go, they're valued at 200. I value my sessions at $288, which is 3 to 5 hours. Now, if somebody can't afford that, I understand that's a lot of money.
Mm,
So if it's something that somebody needs a special price, a discount on a sliding scale,
right.
don't hesitate to reach out to me, because it's something that I love to share. And especially if you had an experience today that, you're wondering what's happening here, your experience, for example, if you want to resolve that, reach out to me. I'm more than
All right.
happy to facilitate the other part of that session for you and see what the subconscious is really getting at. And that goes for, anybody else, just reach out.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank
My
you very
pleasure.
much, Julia Wagner, for being on the podcast.
Yay. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you everybody for listening or watching the podcast.